What if everything you believed about American democracy was a lie? That your vote doesn't shape the future, it just keeps you distracted from who really does. A 20-year study proved that public opinion has almost zero impact on US laws. Think about what that means. Even if every American agreed on something, the government can and will ignore them. So if politicians don't work for you, who do they work for? Because the truth about who runs America isn't just disturbing, it explains everything. Every election you're told your vote is your power, that democracy lets the people shape the future. But if that were true, why does nothing ever change? No matter who wins, the wars continue. Wall Street gets richer, the average American struggles. If voting actually gave you control, wouldn't something, anything, be different by now? Here's the truth. The real decisions aren't made on election day. By the time you vote, the system has already decided your options. Because in American politics, votes don't decide policies. Money does. Running for office isn't about leadership. It's about funding. A Senate race costs $10 million. A presidential campaign, over $1 billion. And that money doesn't come from regular people. It comes from billionaires, corporations, and special interest groups. And it's not charity, it's an investment. Over 90% of elections are won by the candidate who raises the most money. Not the best leader, not the one with the best ideas, just the one with the deepest pockets. The system ensures only candidates who play by the donors' rules make it to the final round. And yet, you're told this is democracy, that you're choosing your leaders. But in reality, you're picking from a list of pre-approved, pre-funded, and pre-owned candidates, the ones who made backroom deals long before you showed up to vote. The media tells you that elections are about the best ideas winning, that leaders are chosen by the people. But elections are just a bidding war, and your vote is there to make it look legitimate. Take Bernie Sanders in 2016. He refused corporate donations, ran on small donor funding, and was shut out by his own party. Because candidates who won't play the game don't get to win. So if people don't control elections, and politicians don't work for you, then who do they work for? Welcome to the world of legalized bribery. If you walked up to a politician, handed them a briefcase full of cash, and asked for a favor, you'd be arrested on the spot. That's called bribery. But when corporations do it, it's perfectly legal, and they call it lobbying. In Washington, there are entire teams of lobbyists whose full-time job is to buy influence. These aren't activists or concerned citizens. They work for billion-dollar corporations, foreign governments, and special interest groups. Their job? To make sure the government serves their clients, not the people. Here's how it works. A corporation wants a law passed or blocked, so they send their lobbyists to Washington. These lobbyists don't just suggest policy changes, they hand politicians the exact laws they want passed. And if the politicians cooperate, they get rewarded. Campaign donations, insider stock tips, and a golden parachute to a high-paying job after they leave office. Ever wondered how a politician with $174,000 a year salary ends up becoming a multimillionaire? This is how. Take former House Speaker Paul Ryan. He spent 2 decades in Congress making an annual salary of less than $200,000. Yet, within just a few years of leaving office, he was sitting on an estimated $8 million fortune, thanks to lucrative corporate board positions and consulting deals. And he's not alone. This is the standard career path in Washington. Serve corporate interests while in office, and they'll take care of you for life. And this isn't small money. In 2023 alone, corporations spent over $4 billion lobbying Congress, more than the government spent on food assistance for millions of Americans. But this isn't spent to help the public. It's spent to ensure that laws are written to protect corporate profits, no matter the cost to ordinary people. And here's the proof. A 20-year Princeton study found that public opinion has almost zero impact on US laws. Even if every American supports a policy, there's still only a 30% chance it passes. Why? Because politicians don't work for the public, they work for the people who fund them. And those people aren't voters. They're billionaires, corporations, and lobbying groups that shape US policy to serve their interests, not yours. These are the real rulers of America, and we're going to break them down one by one, starting with one of the most powerful forces in US politics today. Start with Wall Street. The banks, hedge funds, and investment firms. Their goal is simple: get politicians to change the rules in their favor, take massive risks, and let the public pay for their mistakes. They fund political campaigns, and in return, politicians make sure the system works for them. Regulations are weakened so banks can gamble with our money, knowing taxpayers will cover their losses. Tax laws are written so hedge funds and corporations pay less than the average worker. And when their greed crashes the economy, they're the first to get bailouts while everyday Americans lose everything. They make the profits, you take the risks. Ever wondered why no one went to prison for the 2008 financial crisis? Meanwhile, banks wiped out $19.2 trillion in household wealth. But instead of consequences, they got a $700 billion bailout. Since 2020, Wall Street has received over $4 trillion in government stimulus, while everyday Americans got a one-time $1,200 check. The system isn't broken, it was built this way. Then there's the military-industrial complex. Defense contractors, weapons manufacturers, and private war profiteers. They don't exist to protect America, they exist to keep America at war. Their profits depend on endless conflict, and with politicians in their pocket, they make sure the cycle never stops. The US military is the most powerful force on earth. No country even comes close. Yet America is always at war. Who are they really fighting? Tiny insurgent groups, impoverished nations, and manufactured threats that pose no real danger to the US. Iraq never had weapons of mass destruction. Afghanistan was never a real threat to American soil. But the bombs dropped anyway, and the contractors got paid. Over $2 trillion was spent on the war in Afghanistan, money that flowed into defense contractors, arms manufacturers, and private security firms. Congress, bought off by defense contractors, approves ever-growing military budgets while telling the public it's for national security. Meanwhile, the enemies change, but the mission never does. Drop bombs, funnel tax dollars into weapons contracts, and keep the war machine running. The truth? These wars serve only one purpose: to keep the defense industry profitable. The war on terror, weapons of mass destruction, and spreading democracy are just branding tools to sell war. Since 2001, the US has spent over $8 trillion on war, fighting enemies with no real ability to strike back. War is the business, and peace doesn't pay. Then there's the Israel Lobby, led by AIPAC. It doesn't just advocate for Israel, it ensures that US foreign policy serves Israel's interests above all else. While other industries lobby for profits, AIPAC buys politicians to guarantee unconditional support for Israel, no matter the cost to American people. No foreign government has more control over US politics than Israel. AIPAC and other pro-Israel groups pour millions into political campaigns, making sure that every major politician publicly pledges allegiance to Israel. Those who refuse are smeared, blacklisted, or removed from office. Meanwhile, any criticism of Israel's actions is silenced under the false label of anti-Semitism. Supporting Israel isn't just a choice for politicians, it's a requirement. Presidential candidates, senators, and representatives all give speeches to AIPAC, making their loyalty clear. And when Israel commits war crimes, the US government looks the other way, shielding it from consequences at the UN and continuing to send military funding. The public is told that supporting Israel is necessary for US security, that Israel is America's greatest ally in the Middle East and a beacon of democracy. But none of this is true. Israel does not defend America. It drags America into conflicts that serve its interests. US politicians claim that military aid to Israel keeps the region stable. Yet Israel's policies have fueled decades of war and instability. And when Americans ask why billions are sent overseas while they struggle to afford housing and health care, they're told it's necessary for national security. Ever wondered why America sends $3.8 billion to Israel every year, no matter what? Meanwhile, American cities have rising homelessness, crumbling infrastructure, and no universal health care. US politicians claim there's no money to help their own people, yet there's always money for Israel. Then there's Big Pharma and the healthcare industry. They don't exist to heal people, they exist to make money. Their profits depend on keeping drug prices high, blocking affordable health care, and making sure Americans remain dependent on expensive treatments instead of finding real cures. Big Pharma spends millions lobbying Congress to keep drug prices among the highest in the world. Politicians, funded by pharmaceutical companies, block efforts to lower prescription costs and refuse to regulate an industry that charges Americans 10 times more for the same medications available cheaply overseas. Ever wondered why insulin costs $300 in the US, but just $6 in Canada? The same drug, the same manufacturer, just different rules. The pharmaceutical industry doesn't charge what's fair, they charge what politicians let them get away with. Life-saving medications like insulin cost just a few dollars to produce, but sell for hundreds per dose, because the industry, not the government, sets the price. Cures aren't profitable, but keeping people sick and dependent is. And when Americans can't afford their medication, they're told to crowdfund for survival, while Big Pharma posts record profits. The health insurance industry profits from a broken system that denies care while collecting billions in premiums. And when politicians even suggest universal health care, they're shut down, not by public opinion, but by the donors who bought their loyalty. Americans are told they have the best healthcare system in the world. In reality, they have the most expensive and inefficient system in the developed world, with worse outcomes than countries that provide healthcare for free. The media pushes the idea that universal healthcare would bankrupt the country, yet every other major nation provides it while spending less. Meanwhile, politicians claim that high drug prices fund research and innovation, yet most medical breakthroughs come from taxpayer-funded research, while pharmaceutical CEOs collect multi-million-dollar bonuses. There are also other players in the game, just as ruthless, profiting from the suffering of everyday Americans. Big tech controls what you see, hear, and say, silencing dissent while working with the governments to manipulate public perception. The gun lobby blocks even the smallest regulations, ensuring mass shootings remain a profitable business. The food industry floods the market with ultra-processed, disease-causing products, while lobbying against nutrition policies that could save lives. The private prison industry profits from mass incarceration, pushing for harsher sentencing laws to keep their cells full. And the American education system, backed by banks, traps Americans into lifelong debt, ensuring student loans remain a financial stranglehold from the moment they enter adulthood. But no matter which industry is pulling the strings, the pattern is always the same. Policies that benefit the people never happen, while the ones that serve the elites are passed without hesitation. Americans overwhelmingly support universal health care, higher wages, student debt relief, and gun control, yet none of it ever happens. Meanwhile, the things no one asked for, corporate bailouts, endless wars, tax cuts for billionaires, sail through Congress without resistance. Why? Because public opinion doesn't shape policy. Money does. The Princeton study proved it. The government ignores what the people want. Over 70% of Americans support Medicare for all, yet Congress won't even bring it to a vote. The majority want higher taxes on the rich, yet billionaires pay less than the working class. Over 90% of Americans support background checks for gun sales, but year after year, nothing changes. They let you argue over left versus right to make you feel like you have a choice, but both sides serve the same masters, and the outcome is always the same. Democracy isn't broken. It works exactly as designed, just not for you. They just let you vote so you feel like you have a say, because otherwise you might revolt. If you found this video insightful, You might like another one on a similar topic. Click on the thumbnail to watch or keep exploring. Also, please comment, like, and subscribe to the channel.